Good, good morning. My name is Isaiah, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about my physics theory. The best way I can explain it as a title would be gravity as an emergent property of the interactions of orbital bodies due to rotational and velocity coupling in a rotating universe. And what does this mean? Let's start off with the gravity as an emergent property part. According to the theory, gravity is just the mechanism for balancing angular momentum throughout the universe at all phases and sizes. What does this mean? Well, what this means is that potentially the current gravitational constant is a scalar, and that's why it doesn't work on the constant, excuse me, on the quantum level, and that gravity is an emergent property between orbital bodies, meaning things in orbit need to maintain a balance of angular momentum. So gravity is the force that will maintain this balance throughout the entire universe at all sizes, big and small, basically infinitely, right? Not necessarily a derivation, as I feel like that'll lead to infinite, but kind of an outside inside look. And we're going to get into more of that later. But I want to talk about, I said interactions of orbital bodies due to rotational and velocity coupling. What exactly does this mean? This means that rotation and orbital velocity are intrinsically related through a coupling, through a phase change. What does this mean? I'd like you to think about it as gears in a manual car or differentials changing the directions of a force through phase shifting, through a coupling. So, what this means is, for the most part, velocity and angular momentum will not affect each other until it initiates a phase change. And in order to conserve momentum, they will affect each other. Again, this is in orbit only for orbital mechanics. If you are here on Earth, doesn't matter how fast you spin, it's going to affect the overall angular momentum of the system, which is Earth, which is great. It's what you want. Um, Another way to look at that is protons and neutrons, no matter how fast they spin, it'll only affect the overall momentum of the entire nucleus. This is why they remain so stable yet so large compared to an electron, because they aren't really orbiting each other. They're kind of the same system. And this is why you would essentially need to crash a planet into a planet or a nucleus into a nucleus in order to break it apart. And that's where you kind of get into even another phase change, which hasn't been introduced. I need one more phase change, I think, to represent kind of that turning into E equals mc squared pure energy, and that's how it gets bound up in the nucleus and or the collapse of space time. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on. So I mentioned orbital only and the gear shifting. So the way I want you to think about this is inner rocky planets are spinning really slow but moving really fast, and gas giants are spinning really fast, moving really slow. And at some point, there's a phase shift. The kind of like the asteroid belt can kind of represent that. There's a phase shift where they start spinning at different speeds. But also the angles get a little more serious as you get closer to the sun, and the ratios get a little more serious. So there are multiple phases within each phase. You could tell Neptune and and Uranus are slightly different than Jupiter and Saturn, and so on and so on. I would say it'd be something like kind of like the atomic nucleus, somewhere around seven shells, seven phase shifts, and then you have the actual nucleus itself. You have the leaving of the nucleus into plasma, and then you have the collapse of space time, black holes on the opposite scale of the nucleus, and you have the conversion into pure energy on the other side. And to get into the last part, where we go into in a rotating universe, I believe that this is true because the universe is rotating in order to conserve momentum. Which direction is it rotating? I postulate that it's rotating in both directions on all three dimensions, and which is why the EM waves oscillate between -1 and 1, and and this is why there are initiations of phase shifts to maintain that angular momentum. Thank you once again. My name is Isaiah. I am from Providence, Rhode Island. I hope you have a wonderful day. Be well, be safe. Bless you, bless your family, bless your estate, and your livestock, I guess. Have a wonderful day. Ciao.